A chip architecture perfected in phones just obliterated the processors that powered laptops for 15 years. When Apple dropped its M1 in late 2020, a completely fanless MacBook Air running at 55 degrees was outperforming Intel machines that regularly hit 95 and throttled by 30%. 16 billion transistors on 5 nanometers of silicon didn't just improve laptops, it changed them forever. But this revolution didn't begin in 2020. It began when one Apple executive walked into a room with a slide deck that would end a 15-year partnership with Intel. Cracking open a MacBook from the late Intel era, the first thing most users noticed was not the speed, it was the heat. Laptops that promised all-day productivity routinely ran so hot that the aluminum case could double as a hand warmer. Under sustained work, like video rendering or compiling code, Intel chips inside MacBooks would soar past 95 degrees Celsius. At that point, the processor would throttle itself, cutting performance by up to 30% just to avoid overheating. Reviewers documented these numbers again and again. A 2018 MacBook Pro, for example, would hit that 95-degree mark under a Cinebench load, and the resulting slowdown was impossible to ignore. The fans did not whisper, they roared. Cooling systems spun up to 60 decibels, making even basic tasks sound like a wind tunnel. Every spreadsheet, every photo export, every Zoom call became a balancing act between productivity and patience. For creative professionals, the frustration was not just about noise, it was about reliability. Intensive tasks could push the system to its thermal limits, forcing sudden slowdowns or even unexpected shutdowns. But it was not only the silicon that suffered. Apple's infamous butterfly keyboard, introduced to make laptops thinner, became a magnet for complaints. Keys stuck, letters repeated, and typing felt brittle. Over 20% of affected MacBooks were returned for keyboard repair in some years, a figure traced partly to heat warping the delicate mechanism. Online forums filled with stories of missed deadlines and costly repairs. The surge in keyboard-related support tickets became a running joke among Apple fans and critics alike. Firmware updates tried to patch thermal bugs, but the underlying limits of Intel chips inside ever thinner chassis could not be fixed with software. Each new MacBook promised better thermals, but the gap between marketing and reality kept growing. For users and reviewers, the experience was clear. The hardware was holding back the promise of the Mac. The sense of friction between power and portability, between silence and speed, grew impossible to ignore. Inside Apple, frustration with Intel's limits was not just a talking point. It became a rallying cry among the company's top engineers and executives. Johnny Srouji, Apple's senior vice president of hardware technologies, pulled together a slide deck in 2016 that would quietly start a revolution. The key slide compared Apple's own ARM-based designs, like those powering the iPad Pro, to the latest Intel chips inside MacBooks. The numbers were hard to ignore. Apple's mobile chips delivered higher performance per watt, meaning they squeezed more speed out of every unit of energy. On Srouji's chart, the iPad Pro's A-series chip, running on a fraction of the power, came surprisingly close to matching Intel's laptop-class CPUs. For a company obsessed with thin, silent, and long-lasting devices, this was the proof leadership needed. Tim Cook and Craig Federighi saw the writing on the wall. Relying on Intel meant waiting for someone else's roadmap, someone else's priorities. Apple's own A-series chips, refined year after year for the iPhone and iPad, had set a new standard for efficiency and integration. The iPad Pro's unified memory architecture, where CPU and GPU shared a single high-speed memory pool, had already solved problems that still plagued traditional laptops. It meant less wasted energy and faster access to data for demanding apps like photo editors and 3D design tools. The internal debates were intense. Some Mac engineers worried about breaking away from the familiar world of Intel, with its broad software compatibility and established drivers. But the data was clear. If Apple wanted to control its own future, it needed to control the silicon at the heart of every Mac. Srouji's performance per watt slide became a touchstone, referenced in meetings and strategy sessions as the company weighed the risks and rewards of going it alone. By 2018, the momentum was unstoppable. The leadership team agreed the next generation of Macs would run on Apple-designed ARM chips. The decision did not just promise better battery life or cooler laptops. It set Apple on a path to reimagine what a laptop could be, starting with the architecture at its core. Apple's engineers did not just swap out one chip for another. They rewrote the rules of what a laptop chip could be. At the heart of this new playbook is ARM, a chip design philosophy that favors simplicity and efficiency over brute force. Think of ARM as a streamlined toolbox. It packs only the essential tools, letting you work faster and carry less weight. Compare that to x86, the architecture used by Intel for decades. x86 is more like a Swiss Army knife, capable of handling any job, but loaded with extra gadgets that slow things down and burn more energy. This lean approach lets ARM chips do more with less. Each instruction is straightforward, so the processor spends less time and power figuring out what to do next. That is one reason Apple's chips can match or beat Intel's performance while sipping power. That is crucial for a device you carry all day. Apple did not stop at the instruction set. They also rethought how memory works inside a laptop. Traditional laptops keep memory in separate silos, one pool for the CPU and another for the graphics chip. It is like running a restaurant where the chefs and pastry team each have their own pantry and someone has to ferry ingredients back and forth. Every trip wastes time and energy. With the M series, Apple built a unified memory architecture. Imagine one giant pantry in the middle of the kitchen where everyone grabs what they need instantly. The CPU, GPU, and even the neural engine all share the same high-speed memory. That means less waiting, less duplication, and far less wasted energy. For creative apps, editing video, working with high-resolution images, and even training machine learning models, this setup slashes the time it takes to move data around. The numbers back it up. The M1 chip delivers up to 68 gigabytes per second of unified memory bandwidth. That is like every cook in the kitchen having their own express lane to the pantry, no matter how busy the restaurant gets. This foundation, ARM's efficient instruction set, paired with a shared memory pool, sets the stage for everything that comes next: fast, cool, and quiet laptops that do not compromise on power or battery life. Inside every M series chip, there is a split personality, part sprinter, part marathon runner. Apple calls these its performance and efficiency cores. The performance cores, known as Firestorm in the M1 and M2, are built for bursts of speed. They handle heavy lifting, exporting a video, crunching through a big photo edit, or compiling code. When you hit render in Final Cut or launch a demanding app, these cores spring into action, delivering clock speeds up to 3.2 GHz on the M1. But running at full tilt burns power, so the chip also packs efficiency cores, Ice Storm, optimized for long-haul tasks, checking email, syncing files, background updates. The efficiency cores take over, sipping power while keeping the system responsive. The real trick is how macOS decides who does what. The scheduler, an invisible traffic controller, constantly juggles threads, assigning urgent jobs to the sprinters and routine chores to the marathoners. This division lets a MacBook stay cool and quiet, even as it juggles dozens of apps. It is not just about saving battery, it is about making sure the laptop never feels sluggish, no matter how many browser tabs you have open. Alongside these CPU clusters sits the neural engine, a dedicated block designed for machine learning. On the M1, it is a 16-core accelerator capable of 11 trillion operations per second. The M2 bumps that figure to around 15.8 tops, thanks to a transistor budget that grows from 16 billion in the M1 to nearly 20 billion in the M2. While the CPU and GPU handle general purpose work, the neural engine is tuned for tasks like real-time photo enhancement, voice recognition, or background object detection in video calls. It is like having a specialized studio that translates raw data into instant results without waking up the rest of the system. All of this is possible in part because of Apple's manufacturing edge. By building on TSMC's 5nm process, Apple can cram more transistors into the same space, packing extra cores, cache, and accelerators without increasing heat or power draw. The result is a chip that feels fast, stays cool, and powers through both creative and everyday workloads. These architectural choices, heterogeneous cores, and a dedicated neural engine are not just technical feats. They are the reason everyday tasks, from launching apps to processing images, feel snappier and more fluid on an M series Mac. Open a MacBook Air with an M1 chip, and the first thing you notice is not the speed. It is the silence. There is no fan, just a cool aluminum shell that stays under 55 degrees Celsius even when you are editing video for hours. For many, this was the first time a laptop could handle a 4K Final Cut Pro export without sounding like a jet engine or burning your lap. Reviewers clocked the M1 Air at 2 minutes and 30 seconds to export a 4K 30 frames per second project. The same task on a recent Intel MacBook Pro took over 8 minutes with fans at full blast. Battery life is no longer a guessing game. Real-world tests put the M1 Air at 15 to 17 hours of video playback, often stretching through a full workday and then some. That kind of endurance is not just about watching movies on a plane. It means you can edit photos, render short films, or run creative apps on location, all without hunting for an outlet. For video editors like Sophia Liu, the change was immediate. She described finishing client projects faster and with less stress, since her laptop never overheated or crashed mid-export. The lack of fan noise means you can work in a quiet studio, a library, or even record audio without background hum. It is a difference you feel every day, whether you are a professional creator or just someone who wants their laptop to last through back-to-back Zoom calls and a night of Netflix. The M series did not just raise the bar for performance, it turned all-day battery life and silent operation from wishful thinking into the new normal. For developers, the M series chips didn't just speed up creative apps, they redefined what was possible on a laptop. Take Xcode, Apple's own development environment. On the last Intel MacBook Pro, building a large iOS project could stretch to 28 minutes. An M1 MacBook Pro cut that down to just 11 minutes. That's over twice as fast, and for someone compiling code all day, it means more time testing features and less time waiting for progress bars. The gains weren't limited to Apple's own tools. Machine learning tasks, which used to demand a beefy desktop or cloud server, suddenly became practical on a fanless laptop. TensorFlow models that once crawled on Intel hardware now run up to 5 times faster, thanks to the dedicated neural engine and GPU. Core ML, Apple's machine learning framework, taps into this hardware directly, letting apps process images or recognize speech in real time without draining the battery or heating up the chassis. Rahul Patel, an iOS developer, posted a screenshot showing his daily build dropping from nearly half an hour to under a dozen minutes after switching to an M1 MacBook Pro. For him, the unified memory and fast cache meant less time wrestling with slowdowns and more time actually building apps. The same story played out for data scientists running image classification or natural language tasks. What once required a workstation now fits in a backpack, silent and cool. These numbers aren't just benchmarks, they're a new baseline. Developers, researchers, and engineers found themselves rethinking what a laptop could handle and what workflows could shift from the desktop to the coffee shop. The M series didn't just make laptops faster, it made them tools for a whole new class of work. When Apple unveiled its new silicon, the question on everyone's mind was simple: would old apps still work? The answer came in the form of Rosetta 2, a translation layer that let Intel-based software run on Apple's ARM chips, almost as if nothing had changed. Under the hood, Rosetta 2 rewrote x86 instructions for the new architecture on the fly. There was a cost, about a 30% performance hit compared to native ARM code, but the M1's efficiency often made up the difference. Even demanding apps like the classic shooter Doom ran at 120 frames per second during Apple's first public demo, drawing gasps from the developer crowd. The transition did not stop at translation. Apple pushed developers to adopt universal binaries, single app packages that included both Intel and ARM code. The industry responded fast. Within 6 months, Adobe reported that 90% of its Creative Cloud suite had gone universal. Microsoft Office followed close behind, reaching similar coverage. For everyday users, this meant opening Photoshop or Word on day one of the M1 launch and getting the same experience, sometimes even better performance, without waiting for a full rewrite. The software ecosystem kept pace with the hardware, turning what could have been a disruptive migration into a near-invisible upgrade. Even with the M series shaking up the laptop world, there are still places where x86 holds its ground. In enterprise environments, the story changes. Many large organizations rely on a deep stack of Windows-only software, custom tool chains, and legacy drivers that simply do not run natively on ARM. Running Windows on an M-series Mac through virtualization carries a performance penalty, often 20 to 40% slower than native x86 hardware. For IT departments that need seamless compatibility, x86 machines remain the default. Then there is graphics muscle. Apple's integrated GPUs have closed the gap for most creative work, but when it comes to raw three-dimensional rendering, scientific simulations, or AI training on massive datasets, discrete GPUs from NVIDIA or AMD still outpace even the M1 Max and M2 Max. Workstation-class cards like the RTX 3080 Ti can deliver 2 to 3 times the performance of Apple's top chips in CUDA-heavy workflows. Upgradability is another sticking point. Apple's system-on-a-chip approach means the CPU, GPU, and memory are all soldered together. You cannot swap out RAM or storage later, a sharp contrast to many Windows laptops where users can add memory, upgrade drives, or even replace the graphics card. For power users who want to keep a machine running for years, x86 systems still offer more flexibility. So while Apple Silicon has set new standards for performance and efficiency, it has not replaced every use case. For some users, especially in enterprise, high-end three-dimensional or modular setups, x86 still offers advantages that ARM cannot match, at least for now. Intel's response to Apple's Silicon Leap was swift and unusually candid. In a 2021 earnings call, CEO Pat Gelsinger said that the era of a single dominant CPU architecture is ending. He promised that Intel would accelerate its roadmap, bringing hybrid core designs to the PC world. By late 2021, Intel's Alder Lake processors appeared, mixing performance and efficiency cores in a clear nod to Apple's playbook. AMD, meanwhile, began pivoting its message, highlighting the Ryzen 6000 series as a high-performance, low-power answer for creative professionals. Analyst reports show Apple's share of the premium laptop market more than doubling from 5% in 2019 to 12% by 2022, forcing AMD to target niches it once ignored. Microsoft, Qualcomm, and Samsung all took notice. Microsoft's Surface team referenced Apple's single-core speed when redesigning its own ARM chips, while Qualcomm's Snapdragon 8cx Gen 3 and Samsung's Exynos laptop silicon both launched with claims of matching Apple's efficiency. Gartner now projects that ARM-based laptops could hit 35% market share by 2027, with Apple holding over 15% of the premium segment. Inside Apple, the roadmap keeps accelerating. Rumors point to the M3 chip built on a cutting-edge 3nm process, packing around 25 billion transistors. Leaked specs suggest a 12-core CPU and a 16-core GPU, with the neural engine doubling its speed. If these numbers hold, the performance jump could be as dramatic as the original M1 launch. For the rest of the industry, the race is on, not just to catch up, but to rethink what a laptop chip can be. Today, a laptop that lasts 18 hours, runs cool to the touch, and crunches multi-million pixel edits, all on a chip with 16 billion transistors, isn't science fiction. It's the new baseline. As Qualcomm, Microsoft, and Samsung scramble to catch up, the future of computing is being redrawn right now. The real question: who sets the next standard? Let me know what you think in the comments.